The concept of a fully fleshed out city or part of a fantasy world having something dark and mysterious underneath it is nothing new. We have the Underdark for the Forgotten Realms, even Zopac has its own Undercity type thing going on, and Ptolus by Monte Cook Games is not an exception to it. But it might very well be the best version of it that I have in my possession. So today I want to talk about what's down below. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game monsters, my name is Mr. Tarosky and this is still your go-to YouTube channel for anything 5th edition and Cypher System. And I'm saying both this time because I'm talking again about Ptolus. And Ptolus is a book, a incredibly big book with like I always need to be like 760 pages of one city. Yes, one city with its people, its customs, its rules, its gods, its places, it's everything all in one book. And it is a book that you can use for an entire campaign with dungeon crawls and adventures and everything you need to have the best gaming experience, urban gaming experience that you can find, to my opinion, because I think this might be the best book, the best tabletop RPG book ever written. And it is for the Cypher System and it is for 5th edition. And today I want to talk about basically what is under the city, what is down below, because I have been talking about Ptolus a bit. I have been doing videos on it. I'm doing like an entire video series on this book because it's just too big to review in one video. And I just want to talk about how they approach the Undercity kind of part of the Ptolus city, basically. Now, if you are into the Cypher System, what I want to quickly say is I have a crowdfunding campaign in its last 3 days right now. And it is on the verge of being funded, and it might not get funded if you do not jump on the link in the description below and add your own 16 euros, which is like 17 or 18 bucks to it. If you do, you get a brand spanking new adventure that I'm working on with CatUp, and you get my first adventure that I worked on with CatUp for the Cypher System. So you get 2 full-length adventures, not one-shots, full-length adventures, like 3, 4, 5 sessions per adventure, for the price of one for like 18 bucks or something like that. So make sure to click the link in the description below. I might have found a reason why this might be the best book ever written. Tabletop RPG book ever written. I'm looking at the credits section right now, and it literally states one writer, Monte Cook. It also in the cover, it's written by Monte Cook. Now, I don't know how, or if Monte Cook has written like this much. I don't know how he does it or whatever. But I think this is really important. Now, there's a lot of other people here. There's a lot of other people. But all of those people are creative directors, Cypher System designers, additional design, artists, cartography, cover art, original editor, graphic design, and then there's a few people who create like the Midtown Partisan, the Ptolus Residents, the Visitors to the City, and the Heroes of the Ancient Preamble or something like that, which are sections in the book created by other people or teams of people. But like it kind of says that the main writing of the book is done by one person, and I think that is super interesting because that is probably the reason why it is so damn consistent. And by that I mean is I read a lot of books about cities, about settings, especially campaign settings, and I often find a lot of inconsistency. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We can work around that, or that's just what happens when you write big books. And also, maybe it's supposed to be inconsistent at some points because you need to take out what you want for your game. But this book, if you read this, I've read almost every word in this book. Like literally, I sit down with this thing on a weekly basis and just read parts of it, right? It is so consistent, and it feels so consistent, and it always feels like it is written with the same idea, and every part you read is definitely just like written and told by like the same voice, kinda, that is trying to portray the same feeling of the city of Ptolus. And that I never realized that it is just like written by Monte Cook and the team of people, but like the main writing of the book is Monte Cook himself, which is pretty damn amazing. But enough drooling over Monte Cook's talent and his team's talent. I want to talk about Ptolus itself, the book itself, the city itself, and mainly about the Undercity, or the parts under the city, and mainly about the way that the book approaches that, because there's too much to go into to delve deep, pun intended, into that. So without further ado, let me just go to page 182, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, right here is page 185. So part 4, below the city. And as you can see, it is a part 4 that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters. First chapter is what I mainly want to talk about, what's down there. Hence the title or the thumbnail of this video will probably have those words, what's down there. But they also talk about the Undercity, the sewers, the caverns, and then the Dwarven Hearth, right? But there's much more to it. And I really love the way that they approach this, especially with the fact that they have this first section about what's down there. So they have an introductory section, and then when they are done talking about like all the general stuff about the sections underneath Ptolus, right, they have different chapters, entire chapters. I need to scroll down for a little bit, just hang with me. Entire chapters on like the parts that are there. So the Undercity, there's the sewers, there is the Dwarven stuff, there's ancient Elven stuff, there's all kinds of stuff, and it is huge. If you thought that Ptolus was huge, well, this part, adding this part to it makes it just even bigger. And even if you don't use Ptolus in your campaigns, and you don't use like this city in your campaign, but you have cities in your campaign, there's a lot you can learn from this, because it's just like really well designed. Now they have this dungeon side view kind of thing going on that completely I do not completely understand what's going on here, and I've read about most of this stuff, but it is basically a side view of what is going on under the city, where-ish it is located. So they have them, which is something that I've never seen anybody do, right? This right here. They have the Nobles' Quarters, Old Town, River Gate, Midtown, and Midtown then is, of course, divided up into the Guildsman District, which is something that I want to talk about in a later video. If you want that, hit the thumbs up, hit it in the comments below. The South Market, there's the docks right here, and something really cool is that the prison of the city is reachable from the docks. So when somebody goes and gets some prisoners, they come in with the ship and they unload them right here, and they go through this tunnel, and then they get into the prison, right? Something that is also something that I mentioned in a few videos is there's also the Undercity Market. And if you remember me talking about Delver's Square, which is like a small kind of like social hub in the city, where like the city is the adventure location, and Delver Square is like the social hub in a video game kind of thing, like with Monster Hunters kind of vibe. They have that with like shops, inns, and all that stuff, so the players are not overwhelmed by this entire city. They basically just have like a village within this entire big ass city, right? But right there in the middle of that square, in Devil's Square, there is a staircase that goes down, and that goes down into the Undercity Market, which is a black market. Everybody knows that it's there, but it's kind of like a black market, and although officially nothing really shady happens there, if you want something shady, if you want to sell something shady, or you want to do something shady, that's the place you go, which is also right here. It's in the center, like Midtown of Midtown, right? That's where Devil Square is. My players use that as their safe haven, as the part where they live right now, from where they go to different parts of the city. So this is basically the dungeon side view, and I really like that they put these things in here, because the city is basically on one side it is the sea, water, whatever, and on the other side it is the big ass spire that sits all the way up into the clouds. And now I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So what they do is, and that is why I like this chapter so much, this is something that I haven't seen people like writers do a heck of a lot, and that is they have this section on how all of this is connected, what dungeons are in this world, which is something really interesting. They talk about how the term dungeon in all of the rest of the world of Ptolus, like the entire kingdom, a dungeon is a dungeon. Like, it is a part underneath a castle or a keep where they put prisoners or stock up with, like, supplies or that kind of stuff. That is what a dungeon is. Only in Ptolus, a dungeon is the kind of dungeon that we know from Dungeons and Dragons. Corridors that are connected, weird traps and weird locations and weird creatures and all kinds of stories that are intertwining with different other stories. It is not just like a place where you put your prisoners or your slaves or whatever, right? So yeah, it's really, really cool how they talk about that, how they talk about everything is connected. One very important fact to relate to the players is that many underground areas are connected. A dungeon adventure could exist partially in a cellar of an old manor house and partially in a section of Ghoul's Labyrinth, which the cellars originally builders broke into inevitably, right? So that kind of stuff. Now, one thing that I find really cool and that I want to talk about in this video is the Pits of Insanity. The Pits of Insanity is something really cool. The Pits of Insanity are a phenomenon found throughout all dungeon areas beneath Ptolus, except perhaps for the magically sealed Bane Warrens. Now, the cool thing about this is they say, and that's why I like Monte Cook's writing, right? I really like what that he says. He doesn't say except for the magically sealed Bane Warrens. It's not fact. It is not fact. He says except perhaps for the magically sealed Bane Warrens. Even if a player in your game decides to read this section to prepare, you have those kinds of like dickheads who try to like read that because they think they're going to those dungeons or whatever. They still don't. It's still left open, and without Monte Cook or whoever wrote this saying it's up to the game master's discretion, no, it says except perhaps for the magically sealed Bane Warrens. And I know it's a small thing, but that's proper writing. That is just proper writing. And even in the interior of the spire, the pits are pools of raw chaos spun off from the entropy sphere in the spire near Goth, blah, blah, blah. They first appeared 1300 years ago when Sokolum, the half-demon lich, used his powers to destroy one of the sphere's gates of delirium. So something magical happened, and it spawned chaos, and now there are these pits and spheres and things of insanity everywhere below the city. Like, sometimes they're there, sometimes they're there. I really like that there is this overarching thing that happens because all of these sections of the city they're incredibly diverse. It's not like a dungeon that feels like, oh, the entire dungeon, like 80% of the dungeon is dwarven barracks or 80% of the dungeon is built by elves, which is something that I often have with dungeons, that it all feels like one thing. But everything that is here, from the parts created by the dark elves, by the dwarves, by an old lich, like the sewers, everything feels like its own thing. Although it's connected, it all feels like its own thing, right? The upper levels, there are still people living on the upper levels because there's markets there, there's streets there, there's all kind of like vendors there, there's people who choose to live there. But the lower you go, the less people you'll encounter, and then you go into the depths of like almost hell, right? But although everything feels a little bit like its own thing, this connects it all into like one historical event, and that is what I really like. That is what I like when I say I really like the consistency of a book like Ptolus. It is all very consistent. But what does these Pits of Insanity do? Now, it is written right here for the Cypher system, but this book also, you can also get this book for 5th edition, which then gives it a 5th edition kind of explanation. I don't know what it is, but I would just say it is void magic, because I'm playing Tales of the Valiant in Ptolus, so with the Tales of the Valiant rule set by Kobold Press, and void magic is like a really important aspect of Kobold Press, meaning that I would say this is void magic, because it's just really, while direct contact with the raw chaos in a pit of insanity is deadly. The pit's real infamy comes from the slower transformations they inflict on the things around them. Objects, or portions of objects, as appropriate, have a 10% chance of alternating after spanning 1 hour with a long distance of a pit. After that, there is a 5% chance of alternation after 24 hours spent, and 5% chance after 1 month, 5% chance after 1 year, and 5% chance each year after that. So although the percentage wise it is really small chance, if you stay there indefinitely, it is eventually, by the laws of math and all of that stuff, probability and all that stuff, it is going to happen at some point, right? So there's basically two things that can happen. First of all, when you touch, like there is this image, by the way, right here, where there is this sphere and it's kind of like floating, but it also has a pit below it. And that is because it has been sitting there for X amount of years, probably thousands upon thousands of years, and it's just been like devouring the material below it, and it forms a pit of whatever it is. You don't know what happens when you fall in. Nobody can really tell you what happens when you fall in, because nobody who ever fell in has ever told the story. At least that is my interpretation of it. Basically, it's going to be void magic. It's going to be probably completely destroy you or teleport you to another universe or whatever, something like that, right? I'll find a random rolling table for it once my players get there and jump in. So as you can see, you can be in a vicinity of this, and then it's going to destroy a random material, or you can touch it. If you touch it, it's really, really dangerous. Now, first of all, the 10% chance and the 5% chance and all that kind of stuff, it is really important that you are not going to like roll a D100 for like every little coin or whatever that people have on their on themselves. So they say right here, GMs may not want to roll for every single stone or loose copper piece within a long range of a pit. Instead, assume that after 1 hour, 10% of all objects are affected. Basically, that's the same thing, right? It is not the same thing, but we're gonna say it is the same thing. For like, we don't want to like sit around and roll dice for just this effect for an entire session. So we're just gonna be like 10% of stuff. Let's see what it is. It's your armor, it's your sword, it is your bag of coins, and it is your boots of flying, whatever. It's getting devoured, it's getting destroyed, it's getting it's not a good thing, right? But when you touch it, that is when it becomes really dangerous. Now I want to talk about these random rolling tables for what happens when you stay in the vicinity. But when you touch it, you need to, now this is Cypher System stuff, but it easily translates to 5th edition, and there is a 5th edition version for it if you download the 5th edition book. By the way, if you get this physically for 5th edition, you can, if I'm not mistaken, you also get like the PDF for 5th edition, but you also can get the Cypher System version in PDF with the physical, so you can have both if you play both like me, right? Objects of lower level turn to dust on contact. So lower level than the raw chaos. So every object that is lower than level 6, which translates a bit weirdly into 5th edition, up to the GM's discretion. Each round a creature touches raw chaos, it must succeed on a might defense roll and an intellect defense roll, which is basically a constitution check and an intelligence check, right? Or take 5 points of might damage or 6 points of intellect damage, which is a shit ton of damage when it comes to the Cypher System. 5 points of damage, just consider it doing a lot of damage for the level the players are. Like a lot of damage. Like 5 points of might damage and 6 points of intellect damage. It hurts. Like, it is a lot in the Cypher System. Creatures that spend more than 3 rounds in contact with raw chaos must succeed on an additional intellect defense roll, or which is in 5th edition then a intelligence saving throw, or become confused. Also, it is a level 6 object, so a level 6 intelligence or a defense roll translates to a very, 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 very difficult check. So it's going to be a DC, I would say a DC 20, maybe even a DC 25 for players in 5th edition. So there is a version of it. I'm just not gonna look into it. I just like to interpret it for myself when I read the Cypher System version, because I know it's been originally written for the Cypher System, so I like to read it for the Cypher System and then translate it into 5th edition myself. That's just the way I like to go. So that's what happens. It's really, really bad. Really, really bad. But There's also the material changes, and I really like this. So, living creatures have a chance to be affected after spending time within a long distance of a pit of insanity as follows. After 1 hour, after 24 hours, after 1 month, or after a full year, every full year. Time need not to be consecutive, but GMs should keep track of totals for each character. Generally, these alternations can be blah, 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 blah. So you roll a d100, and there's a few things in here. Your skin changes color, your hair changes color, your chin changes texture, which is you might grow scales on your arms or something like that. I don't know. 1 or 2 limbs are twisted and useless. That sucks. 1 or 2 limbs are enlarged, which gives you +2 to might pull and -2 to speed pull. So you could up somebody's strength and lessen somebody's dex. When you roll, if you roll 100 or 91 to 100, you roll again twice. Let's say you roll a. Do I have dice here somewhere? Where are my dice? Where are my dice? Where's my dice? My dice are here somewhere, right? Where are my dice? Where are my dice? Let's just roll ones on it, right? Let's just roll a freaking d100 on this table and just be done with it, right? So I am touching it. I'm just first rolling for like the 10% chance. So let's say on a d10, I roll a 10. So it gives me that alternation after an hour. I roll a d100 and I have a 92. Roll again twice. Okay, roll again twice. So the first time is a 63. Grows 1 or 2 additional useless limbs. So now I'm basically like, I have 2 arms coming out of my rib cases, but they're useless. Which looks really, really, really weird. Probably. Yeah. Not good. I had to roll twice because I rolled a 92. A 29 is a... Let's see what happens to me. Let's see what happens. Which is just skin changes texture. So now I have scales and 4 arms, of which 2 are useless. It's the same thing with like shape and texture change. So for example, if an item changes, let me just roll for that. 43 enlarges 2d10 times 2d10 in size. Okay, so it enlarges, it becomes like huge or whatever. You might have like a copper coin that just becomes this big and you need to like carry it around. Stuff like that. It's void magic, it's chaos magic, it's whatever you make of it as a GM, and I absolutely love it. One very important reason that I love it as well is because it is not campaign and game changing enough to not use it. And by that I mean that if you, for example, Scarlet Citadel, a great dungeon that I'm running through, I'm doing a video series on it, it's a great dungeon, but it has insta-kill effects, which I hate. They're not really insta-kill, but they're they're almost insta-kill effects. But they also have like game-breaking stuff, like sending somebody 1,000 years into the future. That just breaks your campaign. It completely destroys your campaign. There's other stuff in here that completely just like, okay, as a GM, you're like, okay, I'm putting this book down because we're done, right? This gives a lot of random shit that can happen, but you can work with it. It's built to keep working with it as a game master. Although somebody might have more arms look different, or have a coin. They have to carry a coin around with their extra arms because the coin enlarges. You can use that for some humor. You can use that for some really bad stuff that happens, for some good stuff that happens. But the main reason why I like it is because it doesn't break your game, and you can keep playing in and around Ptolus. Whatever happens, there's might be like 1 or 2 things that I'm missing that are a bit game breaking, but you can also like. Portion of the creature liquefies, vaporizes, or alters into untenable shape. Suffers 20 points of speed damage. That could kill you outright. But other than that, it's just a great thing. People should just not touch it or stay within its vicinity. Also, people who encounter this should be informed about its existence by some kind of wizard or somebody they talk to. Maybe there's somebody in other adventures like there's a sphere of insanity over there, don't go there. And then the players are like, what the fuck is a sphere of insanity? You don't know what a sphere of insanity is. And then they go on to the thread about the sphere of insanity. And that's my first video about what is below Ptolus. Now I want to dig deeper, pun intended, into this region of the city, but also other districts. If there's any districts or any portions or any teams or any questions about the city that you want me to address in my videos, put that in the comments below. Hit the thumbs up if you want to see more Ptolus content, because I really like talking about this city, but my video is getting way too long for the algorithm to pick it up. So I'm gonna leave you to it. Please, 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 please go to the link in the description below or the pinned comment or whatever and back my project that has 3 more days to go for 16 euros to make it happen, to bring an awesome fantasy adventure to the Cypher system. Until next video, bye bye.